How I found out my dad wasn't my dad, part one. So y'all, this is my first time telling this story publicly, and so bear with me. I got my tissue just in case I cry. Got my fan, y'all, because these hot flashes ain't nothing to mess with. So if you see me start dripping sweat, just stay with me, okay? So growing up, it was just me, my mom, and my older brother. We're like 3 years apart, me and my brother. And my mom was born and raised on West Side Chicago, but when she was pregnant with me, she moved to Kansas City, and that's where I was born and raised. And so never was really raised with a father in the home until my mom, she had someone she dated for a little while, but, that lasted a few years. And I used to call him Dad. But we still have a great relationship to this day. But for the most part, we were raised in a home without a dad up until the age of like 12. And she ended up getting married, which the environment there was not healthy at all, just unhealthy, and lasted way too long, if you ask me and any of the siblings. So I ended up having stepbrothers and stepsisters. My brother moved away to Chicago to live with my dad at a certain point, and it was just so much. And so I found myself like always trying to figure out like where I fit. Imagine being 12. It's just you, your mom, your brother. Then all of a sudden she gets married, and there's 4 kids in addition to you guys, and they're all younger than you. And so it's kind of like you're thrown into this mix of now being like big sister, kind of like mini mom, all these duties and things all of a sudden. And the thing that was closest to you, like your brother, is now gone. And so you find yourself kind of like in an isolation almost, right? Because mom has all these responsibilities now, and here I am, trying to find my way. I would say I was a like very complacent child, or not complacent, but compliant, and never really gave like too much trouble, right? So I always wanted to prove that I was a good girl, and that get good grades and all those things, just kind of like an overachiever in a way, just trying to find my place, right? To this day, I still love like my stepbrothers and sisters. I have absolutely nothing bad to say about them, but it was just an unhealthy environment, even for them, for everybody. I always knew my dad, who lived in Chicago, to be my dad. I would go sometimes not for the summer, only when my mom would visit her family, like her cousins and extended family, was I able to go. So it was very rare that I could go by myself. And as a matter of fact, I don't know if I remember ever being able to go by myself. It was always mostly I only went when she went. And my dad was married. Even when I was born, he was married. That dynamic was a little weird. So like when I was young, I when you're young, you're not really thinking of like life on a level that an adult would process it, right? And so back then it was like a child is seen and not heard. And so we didn't have many opinions, we didn't have much say or anything. That's kind of the life I lived. So I've always known my dad to be married, but I also had known him to have girlfriends. Okay, so I thought it was weird as a child, but it seemed like everybody around me accepted it. So I was just like, okay, like this is their lifestyle. I'm like, back in the 70s, y'all was, okay. Okay, so that's kind of like what my life was. So when I would go visit my dad, he owned multiple buildings. So his wife had a building, he had a building, and I called that building like the main house, right? And so I would always, and my mom would stay at the main house, and his wife had her own house and things like that. So my dad and even his wife sometimes would stop through, say hello, and that was just normal for us. I always knew it was kind of dysfunctional, like this don't even make sense. But like I said, stay in a child's place. Don't ask no questions. This is what it is, right? And so all my life I kind of lived like that. So when my brother left and was sent to Chicago, I then felt very alone, like isolated, alone. And so whenever I would get to go to like Chicago and see my dad, it would be like, oh, this is exciting, fun. And he was always excited to see me. Now, he had children with his wife as well, and they were all older than me. So everybody's literally older than me. I may, from my dad, have one sibling that was younger. And that's about it. But I was not raised around them. And so I would only see them when I seen them, right? But it was never like strong interaction with me and them. We were either at the main house, and then he would take me, my mom would go and visit her family. He would take me around like the family. But it was always kind of like you could tell no one mistreated me. You can just tell that I was tolerated. And so I'm a little girl. Like, I don't know really what's going on. I don't know, the ins and out of, the dynamics of the relationships and how they came about or whatever at this point. Like, all I know is I'm here to visit my dad. We're going out to dinner with like his wife and, my sister and all that. And I just knew that it never felt fully comfortable. Like his wife, she wasn't mean to me, but she wasn't overly kind either, right? For me, it was always like this real weird dynamic in my life growing up of finding my space, finding where I fit. And so in high school, whenever I would go to school, or middle school, whenever I would go to school, I felt like I fell into that dynamic too of not really fitting in any type of group setting. And so how I coped is I was friends with everybody, right? So I think people looked at that as like, back then it's silly. Like, you need to be with the in crowd, or the cheerleaders, or the drill team, or the athletes, or and me, I just wasn't feeling none of that. I didn't really fit into no particular group. I just wanted to be friends, right? And so this is my dynamic all my life, just to give y'all context, right? Dynamic. I would visit sometimes. And then my dad, like, of course, my dad will send me a little money here and there. And we'll get into that later, because the narrative that some of these people had, it ain't mine. I'm like, where y'all get that from? Okay, so anywho. So y'all, fast forward many, many years. Whenever I leave Chicago, like, it's not like I'm talking to my siblings. Like, I'm literally just going back home and living life. And then whenever we visit, we visit. All right. My dad was not one to get on an airplane. He was not one to travel like that. And so it was very rare that he would come and see us. So we always had to go and see him. Right. I don't know what the dynamic was with him and my mom as far as like him sending money for me or whatever. All I know is like every now and then when I needed something in high school, like let's just say I needed to pay a fee to be a part of a organization or something like that, like he would send a few, like maybe $100, here and there for me. I know for me, it was like pulling teeth to get anything. Okay, you got to go through a spill. You got to almost beg, okay? And so that was just my experience, right? And so I'm speaking from my experience because I feel like everybody else has a narrative. And my question is, how do you have a narrative of somebody when you ain't ever even really talked to them or asked them anything about themselves, right? And so, crazy. We'll get into that too. Okay, pause. So what is this thing about people creating narratives around an individual's life that they know nothing about because they haven't been a part of their life, or they have never even had a deep conversation with this person? I found out that the narrative was that my dad paid for everything for me. So even for me and my husband, so our cars and our house and our wedding and my college tuition. And I'm thinking, I didn't receive a dime for nan one of those things, right? And so like this narrative that other people outside of your world will create, and it does nothing but like fester bad feelings and unhealthy relationships and all those type of things. Based on what? Based on lies, based on stories, or I don't even know where these stories came from, y'all. Like, I have a big old fat, or had a big old fat mortgage that said otherwise. Blood, sweat, and tears, hard work, and dedication is what got me my house. Never had a father or anybody to buy a car for me ever in life. My mom helped me with my first car. I don't even know where these narratives came from, but this is the dynamic of someone in my position, like what we can experience, and these stories that's built up. I feel like the victim of other people's decisions that I have to pay the consequences for. I didn't ask to be here. I never asked for it. So how then do you blame the person born into it when they literally had no hand in the mix of it? I hear so many stories, you guys, other than my own, of people who are in these very situations and they literally had no hand in creating it. And to me, I'm bewildered with how insensitive and just evil or mean that people can be when it comes to dealing with people like this. So I'm not saying that people are perfect or anything. I'm just saying that look at everything in totality and be objective, and take yourself out of it and look at it from a distance, and then see, what conclusion you come up to then. But part 2 loading.